Okay, in this video, we're talking about full spoilers for Fantastic Four First Steps, everything from characters to plot points to cameos, post-credit scenes. So if you have not seen the movie yet, you don't want to be spoiled, pause this video, go see the movie, and then watch the video afterwards. Okay, so I did this for Superman. I want to do it for Fantastic Four as well. I want to do it for other movies that come out that are like big comic book movies. But these two specifically felt different from the rest because they had to create worlds. They created Earth 828 and whatever we're calling the Superman Earth. But like that was built up from scratch, so you could talk about the characters, but you can also talk about some of the other interesting small details that we only found out in this movie. So for that reason, I think we could talk about Fantastic Four in a little more depth than we usually do with these. My thoughts about the movie after seeing it a second time are the same as my thoughts watching it the first time, which is it's really good. I think this is a movie that a lot of people seem to be connecting with. It made a lot of money. It did pretty well overseas, so I think it is being viewed as a success. I've heard a lot of people say it is their favorite Marvel movie. I've heard a lot of people who say that like they think it's fine. It's not their favorite, but like the fact that it's getting some people, I think Thunderbolts did this too this year, which was really good, which is some people are seeing this going, oh my God, this is what I wanted from the MCU. And like these two groups of people aren't necessarily the same. They're probably people that love how Thunderbolts kind of feels like the Avengers, and people that love how Fantastic Four feels like something different than all of that. There's other people that think they're both fine and people that don't like either of them. But I think it's good that the MCU is now covering all of these groups. Like it has something for people who want an Avengers-like action comedy, and it has something for people who want a more, let's say, Incredibles-like action comedy. Like it's got funny bits, but I don't think Fantastic Four leans as much on the comedy as Thunderbolts or your average Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. I'm going to talk about everything. I'm going to start with characters, get the four right there, the four figures, which I think these are quite good Marvel Legends figures. Let's talk about Pedro Pascal, Mr. Fantastic. I liked him. He was the one who, as the casting was announced, I was like, that's an interesting choice. I like him. I don't know exactly what this is going to feel like because I wasn't sure how this character is going to be similar to characters like Joel or Oberyn or The Mandalorian, but I think there is some similarities. I mean, obviously, the idea that he has a kid that he has to protect is a big part of it, but also just the idea of responsibility. I think that's something that Ellie brings out in Joel, but responsibility via guilt, and I think that's a big part of Reed, because Reed failed to protect everyone from the cosmic rays, and they got superpowers, and specifically Ben turned into a rock monster. Reed feels guilty, and he has to double and triple and quadruple check everything to make sure nothing like that ever happens again, and that is only amplified by the fact that he has a kid. I think Joel in The Last of Us feels guilty because of what happened to his daughter, so now he needs to be extra careful of this new kid in a way that I guess that's not necessarily true of The Mandalorian as much as I can remember, where I think this responsibility being thrust upon him is like a new thing and something he's interested in, but I think Joel shares that responsibility with Mr. Fantastic. I also loved how they played him as just anxious. I think that's a good energy for someone like him to have. And I think Pedro, in interviews, and by the way, the press tour for this movie is insane. All the Marvel characters from now on should have to play Marvel rivals as their character because it's really silly. I think the cast seems to be kind of quietly going insane. Well, not all quietly. Pedro Pascal is loudly going insane, laughing and giggling and stuff. Joseph Quinn seems like he's just like kind of like, oh my God, I'm being asked the same question a billion times in a row. Vanessa Kirby is a machine, making all this stuff seem like it's interesting. And Emma Moss-Backrack feels like he's there for the ride. He's the one who feels maybe the most comfortable or the most like, that probably is like what it's like talking to him. But Pedro was asked, I believe, what it would be like if Mr. Fantastic was at a party with Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr. His answer was good, which was like, he'd be interested to hear what he has to say, but in the party setting, I think Mr. Fantastic would feel a little bit more separate from everyone. He wouldn't feel like he has to hold court like Tony Stark does, but he would be listening to what Tony Stark has to say because he would find that interesting. And I think that's a good read of Mr. Fantastic, of Reed. So I think Pedro Pascal did a solid job. As far as the look, I don't love the beard, but whatever. I know he said in an interview that he didn't like the way he looked in Wonder Woman 1984, and from that reason, he will not be clean shaven in a movie like this for a while. I don't fully agree. And listen, Pedro, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I think you look fine. I think the movie was just kind of a mess, but you know, if that's what we're getting, then that's what we're getting. And I've kind of made peace with it, especially since we also had bearded John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic. And oh my gosh, watching this version of the movie made me so glad that we didn't do the John Krasinski version of this movie. It's not that he couldn't do it. It's that I think John Krasinski has too much traditional charm to him to make this read feel as kind of out of place as Pedro Pascal did. Not to say Pedro Pascal isn't charming, but I don't know if like John Krasinski could turn it off the same way that I think Pedro can. So I don't know, maybe there's another universe where they made Fantastic Four movies with John Krasinski and they're great, but for me, I think this was definitely like more interesting. Vanessa Kirby, Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, obviously great. Many people are saying she's like the standout performance of the movie. She holds the whole thing together. I think she also feels incredibly smart. And from what I've seen in interviews, seems like she understands Sue, which is tricky because like understanding Johnny or the Thing, like those are very basic archetypes. Understanding Sue, it's easy to look at the Fantastic Four and kind of see her and go, oh, she's the mom of the group and whatever, and not understand why she is able to be the mom of that group, why she's able to hold that group together. She has all kinds of skills, you know, she's a spy, she's a diplomat, she's a scientist. These are all aspects of Sue that did feel like they came out of this performance and maybe were missing from the previous Sues. Also think, you know, Charity looks like Sue Storm, so that was helpful. And I think her accent was good. Definitely didn't feel as fake as like early Doctor Strange Benedict Cumberbatch. Maybe wasn't as on point as like, I don't know, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I don't know if he's the high bar for these British accents, but she was good. Joseph Quinn, Johnny Storm. He was, I think, my biggest surprise. I didn't know what to expect with him. As with Pedro Pascal, like I had an idea of what a Pedro Pascal character is like. Joseph Quinn, I really didn't know. And I watched the Stranger Things season he's in. I think he did a good job in it. But I was still like, what is that? How's that going to translate to Johnny Storm? I think he did something completely different. I think he brought an energy that feels, I guess there's a little bit of Eddie Munson in there, but he's definitely not as much of a rebel. He felt like, you know, a pretty boy. I said in my Letterboxd review that he had Kenergy, and I'm standing by that. First of all, I think his accent, because he is another British actor playing an American character, it sounds like he went for Ryan Gosling Ken, and I think that's fine. I think that's a cool choice. I feel like you could probably close your eyes and listen to him say like, Johnny had a moment with the alien had a moment with Johnny, and like just close your eyes and imagine Ken saying that, Ryan Gosling, and it feels natural.
No, I get it. Johnny loves space, Johnny loves women. Now there's a literal naked space woman, and Johnny thinks they had a moment.
But I also think he had kind of the ego of Ken, the confidence of Ken. Like when I said the Kenergy thing, some people commented in like the original review, I think like, but he's not dumb. And like, I guess Kenergy could be considered also dumbness and like him-boness. But I think more than anything else, Kenergy is a confidence masking an insecurity. And I think in this situation, Johnny felt like he wasn't the smart one. He was smart and like he kind of had something to prove. Although it seemed like the family accepted that like he's doing his thing with the languages and let's see if he figures that out. But on the other side, it felt like this Johnny specifically had a difficult time feeling like he was taken seriously by Reed. And I think, you know, maybe flames on a little bit, maybe plays the attitude up a little bit to balance that. And I think he was very funny and I thought he was great. I think he looked perfect. I think Johnny has had a bunch of different looks and he's the one who can kind of do whatever is cool at the time. So like in Fan4Stick or in the original Fantastic Four movie from the 2000s, like Johnny just looks like a cool guy from that time. Now in this movie, Johnny looks like a cool guy from the 60s, and I like the way he dressed specifically. I think it was funny that another character who we'll get to called him out on that. And then Ben Grimm, the Thing, played by Eben Moss-Bachrach, he was fantastic. I feel like I've heard people say this, he had the least to do in this movie, which is true. I think everybody had pretty specific arcs that were really, really easy to track. So like Reed had like, can he solve the problem of Galactus, which was kind of a metaphor for can he keep his baby safe? Can he solve the problem of the danger associated with a child? Sue was more or less the same way, although she felt like she was more specifically zeroing in on like protecting a child, protecting it from the world and protecting it from like the outside. And in her case, protecting it from a hostile population who like wants to, you know, feed it to the big space god. Johnny had the language thing, felt like he wasn't being taken seriously. And then he had to overcome that by, you know, learning about Shalabal. He had the flirting going on. That was great. And then I love that we find out that that's kind of part of his plan. And yeah, that arc works for him. But then with Thing, it was like his arc was he's unlucky in love, which is something that we really mostly know from the fact that he's on a dating show, which is something that didn't make it into the final cut of the movie. They did just put it out on Instagram. And it was something that was in like one of the first things they showed from this movie at Comic-Con. So like I had seen this in a bootleg, video from Comic-Con, I don't know, maybe a year ago, however long ago they showed this, where they were on Make a Match. And that was supposed to be, I think, the indication that like he's single and he is, instead of, turning down women left and right, like Johnny probably does, he has to turn to these blind date programs, find someone to go out with. And in this case, he met Roz Rosman, played by Natasha Lyonne, who was a teacher, and she was nice to him. And then later he felt like, oh, I shouldn't hang out with her. I feel like there was one bit where he like walked around, didn't see her, and then felt bad. And then later he goes to the synagogue or temple or whatever it is, and then does see her, and then is like, cool. And that's it. And I think that's fine. Like, I feel like the relationship with that character will go nowhere. I fully expect her to be gone in the 4-year gap between the end of the movie and the post-credit scene. Not because I don't think she's good, but because I think, A, he has to date Alicia Masters, who's like his actual one true pairing kind of character. And B, like, I think my thing with her, while she feels obviously different from Ebba Moss-Backrack, I think she feels a little too similar for them to be like an interesting couple. They have the same kind of wisecracking Brooklyn attitude. And I don't know, he's from Yancey Street, which is supposed to be Delancey Street. So yeah, but he has that same kind of New Yorker-y thing going that I think I'd like to see him dating someone with Alicia who is just like different, who has a different vibe completely. Because that's interesting. But the Thing looked goddamn fantastic. Like, I did it again. I'm going to try not to use the word fantastic in this review, not because I don't believe that the things that I'm describing as fantastic are fantastic, but just because I don't want this review to be me saying that was fantastic, because that's boring. I think the Thing looked great. I think the Thing looked super real. I think it was a perfect, like, he emoted perfectly. The face was exactly what you want from the comics. And I don't think everything has to be exactly like the comics, but I think there's situations like this where it's like this character feels friendly because partially of the face that he has in the comics. And if you change that to try to make it look more realistic, like in Fantastic, you lose a lot of that character, you lose that personality. And it's not to say that you can't make a thing that doesn't look like the one from the comics, that feels like the one from the comics, but if you start changing things and it doesn't feel right, that might have something to do with it. So I loved how specifically it felt like the visual team, everybody over at Marvel, went to the comics for so much of the inspiration, specifically for Ben Grimm. Because he looked great, loved his size, loved that he wasn't like a Hulk, and I love that in the figure. Like, he's big, but he's not like humongous, because that's how the Thing usually looks. I didn't love his beard. It's not my favorite. I hope he shaves that before the next movie. I don't know why. It just didn't look right to me. And I didn't mind the sweater, although I think it's interesting that the figure came like this, the shirt off, even though he's only like that for like one scene of the movie, which is the scene where he's saving the boat. Every other scene, from what I can tell, he's wearing the sweater, as far as I can remember. So those are your 4 principal cast. They had great chemistry. They really did. I loved that Ben and Johnny seemed like they liked each other. I liked how Johnny and Reed felt like, not they didn't like each other, but like Reed had that, oh, you're dating my sister, nobody's good enough for my sister, like that kind of energy. I think that's fine. And I liked that Reed was like, listen, you're very smart, but I'm the smartest man alive, so you should listen to me. Like, that energy. Both of them, I think, had interesting chemistry, and I liked how Sue was this figure in the movie who, whenever one of these characters kind of fell apart a little bit, usually these two, was able to be like, no, we're going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. Like, I think you need a character doing that. And a character who's like, no, being Fantastic Four is good. It's good for us to do this. It's made the world better. It's made our lives better. And every so often, I guess it's interesting to see the hero not want to do hero stuff. But I like a character in a superhero movie like Red Guardian and Thunderbolts was excited to be a superhero. But okay, so main forecast, great. The big other two, we had Julia Garner as Shala Ball. I think she was fine. I don't have incredibly strong feelings about her. I watched the first season of Ozarks, and I think she was okay. I think she did like what you need from a Silver Surfer performance. They basically made Shala Ball the Norrin Rad version of the Silver Surfer. She took on the role as Herald to save her world Zenla, and then she feels guilty about it. And that's the arc that she goes through here. Sacrifices herself. Good. Looked great. Loved the hair. I think the hair originally, when I saw it in like the first, I don't know, trailer, I was like, that's a little like, but because they gave her so much texture, and specifically the tarnishing on her whole body and stuff, the hair also felt very real, and it felt like just like a metal fixture on her head. I think, personally, having seen both this movie and Superman, and knowing that the engineer in the Authority usually looks like this is what the engineer should look like. I know so like they can't do it because they did Silver Surfer, but like this is what this character traditionally looks like, and it gives a very different vibe. Like, you see her and she feels otherworldly. She feels like she's a god, and instead of, you know, a person in like a leather outfit that sometimes, you know, does a weird flip thing and changes her body stuff. Listen, I don't want to, I just didn't love that look. We'll talk about action scenes later, but like, I think the Silver Surfer looked great. The scene with the chase is the coolest I feel like the Silver Surfer has ever looked in a movie. So good. And then Galactus, Ralph Ineson. I knew I would love this when they put the casting out, because I liked him in Game of Thrones and Willow and the Green Knight, and obviously Galactus is so similar to the Green Knight. I am glad that this performance felt very human. It felt like a guy walking around in a suit, and it seems like they did give him a practical suit for some of this, and I think that showed. I loved how much his face was able to emote. Like, he felt like a character who was a space god, like force of nature, whatever, but also like he didn't not feel like a guy who had like teeth and like a nose and stuff. He had a very specific, this is one of the things about the popcorn bucket. First of all, I'm not spending $80 on a popcorn bucket. Second, if I had, I would want one that has a Ralph Ineson looking face. I know you're thinking, well, the popcorn bucket kind of does. Yeah, but it doesn't really have his nose and mouth. And I think that is crucial for something like that, because that's what it is. It's his face. And like, I like that the specifics of Ralph Ineson made it into Galactus. Yeah, man's just got an incredible voice. Okay, other characters. Talked about Roz Rosman. I think it's interesting that she was there. I know that means something because like she is, I heard people say that they were upset that she wasn't Alicia Masters. But again, I think she's too much like him to be a fun Alicia. Alicia needs to feel different. Also, I've heard people say Roz Rosman is a throwback to Jack Kirby's wife, who is named Roz. And I think that's cute. I like how Jack Kirby this movie was, how it ends with the Jack Kirby quote. I think it's interesting that like at one point we see what seems to be a Jack Kirby and a Stan Lee type in a New York office drawing comics. I do not remember the name of the character that they have sketched out. It's probably someone from like comics from the 50s that I just didn't recognize immediately. I will say other actors here. We had Sarah Niles played Lynn Nichols, and she was, I believe, the Fantastic Four's like manager or agent, chief of staff, something like that. Fine, you know, not a whole lot going on there. Don't know what purpose this character served really, but she was fine. And then we had Mark Gatiss played Ted Gilbert. He was fine. He hosted a show and, you know, acted like that. But then Paul Walter Hauser as Harvey Elder, aka Mole Man, wonderful. Love the look of him. Love the scene where Breed has to beg for his help. I will say, if you want more of him, he's all over this. Because this comic, even though the costumes would suggest that this is from a later adventure, that's only in the very end. Because in the beginning, it's them in their classic black and blue costumes, fighting Giganto and then fighting Mole Man. And it's the same thing that happens where like Mole Man steals the Pan Am building by kind of collapsing the ground underneath it, sends up Giganto as a distraction. But I think what we get a little bit more of here is like, it's kind of explained that Sue reaches a diplomatic solution with Mole Man, and that's something that only she's able to kind of figure out. Otherwise, they just like put him in jail, I guess. And it's way more interesting in this book because you see Mole Man talking about his people like he is a political leader. I'm going to read you some of his lines. These are things he says. This is something that is quoted from him. We don't see where, but politics is power of the moment, and political power unused is power wasted, and power wasted is power lost. And power lost never really comes back, especially in politics. So when your moment comes, sees it. That's a quote from Mole Man. So he's like, he talks a lot. And I think you get a little bit of that in this movie based on how, the characters treat him. But I do think it's just funnier, like in this, I'm now a political prisoner of the surface world. Do not despair. Rather return to our home. Continue our great work. Remember, comrades, we build the foundations of the future. So I think he's great. I love the costume. I like Paul Walter Hauser a lot. I'd like to see more of him. I hope he, shows up in future stuff. And I really like, and this comes up in the comic, Sue's talking about this experience of capturing Mole Man. And she's like, man, I really hope that this isn't what we do. Like, we just find people who feel oppressed or whatever and just beat them up. Like, there's got to be another step. And she comes to this political solution, gives them some form of sovereignty, and that is cool. Like, that's a cool angle for Sue to go down. The funniest line of the movie, and the one that felt most like a Marvel line, was when Paul Walter Hauser said, "Don't be angry at me, Johnny. I didn't dress you." That was just very funny. It was good. Let's say Matt Shackman, direction, good. The direction for this was very, very solid. Like, it looked cool. The characters interacted well. Felt like a lot of sets were used. The hard thing to talk about with the director here is, like, the movie worked. All of the things I'm going to talk about more or less worked. So the direction was good because it made that movie. And I guess it's harder to say than, like, this production detail or this costume detail was really cool. And, we'll see maybe some of the decisions, the directing decisions in the future, but it's hard to say exactly what to give Matt Shackman credit for. Franklin, the baby. Everyone said this, and I think it's true. It looked weird in that one shot. I think part of why it looked weird is because Reed's hand also looked weird. If I remember correctly, Reed is stretching and holding the baby, so that whole shot just looks strange. But whatever. I think this is a problem we've had in a lot of movies, and not just in, like, American Sniper, when they just don't have a baby, so they use, like, a little doll, which apparently the first baby called out sick, the second baby called out sick, and they had to film something. Like, I feel like this is a different story, but it's like, what are you gonna do? Put the baby in, like, a harness, a little wire harness? Like, babies look weird. Let's talk about some of the movie details that I think were interesting. The intro to the movie is the Ted Gilbert Show. This may be one of my criticisms of the movie. I like the Ted Gilbert Show a lot. I remember hearing that part of the deal was it was this greatest hits of, like, them doing all their cool stuff, like this kind of walk through memory lane of them fighting a bunch of villains and doing a bunch of things. I think it's weird that we only saw one villain in this thing, and that was Mole Man, who is a character we're going to see later anyway. I was kind of hoping for more just dudes in costumes running around being like, I'm the wizard, and you're like, that's probably an actor I'm supposed to recognize. When I heard that one of the cameos was the original people from the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, I'm like, oh, are they going to be the Frightful Four? Because that'd be a fun way to set them up. Or are they going to be actors playing the Fantastic Four in, like, a movie, which would also be fun, but it wouldn't make sense because they're not the right age. But I am kind of bummed. And we got name checks, right? They say, like, the Mad Thinker destroyed the monorail, but, like, show the Mad Thinker then doing that so that we could see him and go, oh, there he is. Just because I think that would add a little color to this universe. There's bits where a character would say, like, wow, Reed, you arrested Diablo and the Puppet Master and the Wizard, and it's like, could we see that? I'd like to see it. As much as it is fun to hear it, like, it'd be a cool little news report, seeing them all perp walked out, and, just like the cops trying to figure out what to do with their giant lasers that they were going to shoot at each other, or Reed, I guess. I also think this must be part of where at least John Malkovich would have been, because we see a super ape, we see one of Red Ghost's super apes, but we don't see Red Ghost, and, like, that's, I think, the best example of, like, we'll put that in the movie then. I'd love to hear their explanation for why. I want a very technical, like, because I'm sure they said, like, it didn't quite work with the flow. Give me the specifics, not because I don't believe them, but just I'm so curious. What was it where it was like, oh, we really liked how this went into this, and if you showed him, you lost this moment of him climbing the staircase thing or whatever. I don't know what it is, but I'm very curious. I was also hoping with that character that we would get a moment where Reed, and this is something I believe that does happen in Fantastic Four Life Story, one of the two books that this is very heavily based on, where Reed goes to supervillains for advice, like other super geniuses who's just like, listen, I can't figure out what to do with this Galactus thing. Can you help me? And not all of them, but like Mad Thinker, Wizard, Red Ghost, those are like super geniusy ones. So they would definitely at least be able to throw in their 2 cents and like be unhelpful. But I don't know. I just think that could have been interesting. And I'm, a little bummed. And it's one of the shorter Marvel movies, which I love. Like, I like a nice tight movie, but I feel like if anything, we could have spent a little bit more time here having a little bit more fun. That being said, I like that they showed the Giganto fight, and I think that looked really good. Better than that one pizza commercial. Like, I don't know, that was cool. I do think some of the visuals here were great. The visual of, like, Ben towing the boat, good. We've obviously seen that a lot. Although, like, what does Ben do? He has to hold his breath that whole time. Like, he gets dumped in the water, does a cannonball, and then walks out holding. But, like, he can't swim. So it's just one big breath, and he does it all by walking at the bottom of the ocean. That's gotta be tough. But then, Sue catching the 7-Up sign or whatever, fine. Johnny flying into the fire and absorbing all of that fire as he like pulls his arms up. Amazing. What a cool looking shot. And what a cool idea. I think the cut to the firefighters with like smoke all over their faces going, hey, thanks. And then he does that back to them, like, great. And just that image was one for me that sold like, oh, this character's really powerful. Like, not just put out a fire in a building, like put out a humongous fire and suck all the fire into him. And yeah, I don't know why, but that visual really felt like something unique. Maybe it was just because that wasn't in the trailer, but some of those shots weren't in the trailer that I've described. Let's see. All the stuff at Family Dinner is great, obviously. Like, those are the Marvel scenes that really work. Silver Surfer's first meeting is cool. I like that Johnny thinks he had a moment with her. And I love that the Fantastic Four, in that moment, is just like, we could go, let's go to space and beat up Galactus. And they think they can do that. And that's funny. I would imagine at this point in their history, the Fantastic Four has not fought aliens yet, because none of the villains that were described, I don't think, in the original thing are aliens. But, you know, they've got plenty of alien villains. I don't know if you count Annihilus as an alien. He's like from another, you know, dimension. But like, they got Blastar, and there's plenty of them. Everything in space was super cool. Galactus's introduction is awesome. The bit with him kind of hidden in darkness with just the eyes light up and they're huge. And he's huge. He's got all kinds of stupid tubes. Loved it. One detail I thought was interesting. It felt like the way this Galactus worked, he had not just a face, but like a face with like some sort of like kind of lines over it. And I don't know what that was, but it looked cool. I like the idea that this Galactus is big, but not like enormous, but he could be. And this is always how Galactus works. He traditionally looks like the person who is seeing him. So if you're a Skrull, he looks like a Skrull. If you're a human, he looks like a human. If you're a squirrel, he looks like a squirrel. So I think the idea that like Galactus takes the form of the person he's talking to, makes him feel more powerful. And takes the form mentally. It's not even, he doesn't transform. He just kind of, you perceive Galactus that way. But I think that explains why like he looks like Ralph Ineson. He has like a face. Yeah. Shalabal surfing on the black hole is beautiful. That was so cool. That was the specific thing that I heard a couple of people talking about as I left the theater. Just that whole, you know, scene of her surfing into the whatever faster than light speed tunnel thing, but then also just surfing on the smoke from the clouds. So cool. I also think it's really funny how much pressure I feel like the Fantastic Four in this movie puts on Sue. There's so many moments where Reed is like, Sue, I need you to make a force field around the whole ship, or I need you to make the whole ship invisible. Whereas with Ben, it's just like, punch that guy and run around and punch him again. Or, you know, Johnny, it's like, shoot fire at him. It feels like every time we're asking Sue to do something, it's like, do the craziest thing we've ever asked you to do. And then with stretching, it's like, I'm going to stretch and get that thing over there. Now, Sue, continue to have the whole world in a force field. Like, I don't know. But I like that would suggest that she is the most powerful member of this team, because I think she usually is. I feel like sometimes Johnny is like more destructive, and like with his fire, he could destroy, you know, the atmosphere and whatever. But like Sue is just generally the strongest. I also think saw an interview with Vanessa Kirby when she said that there's a line that she thinks is cut. I can't remember it, so I think it probably was, where she's talking to Mole Man after he gives Reed permission to use Subterranea, where, you know, maybe he's being difficult, and she says, I remember I can like make a little force field in your head that blows up your brain, so you got to do what I say. And like, that is true. That is one of the things she can do. She doesn't do it that often, even though it'd be pretty handy. I hope she tries it with Dr. Doom. And he's like, no, Sue, I have carbon fiber veins. It won't even work. Also, Dr. Doom in this movie a tiny bit in the end, but we do see Latveria is a country that is not represented in the UN. Like, they don't have a guy there, but they have little flags. So I feel like that means this is probably the Dr. Doom from this universe that we're going to be dealing with in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think that's cool. I do feel like if that's the case, I would have liked one more mention. And this would have had to be in the scientist thing. Like Reed would have all the scientists on like a voice call or something. And Ben would be like, what about? And then Reed would be like, he didn't answer. And then that's all you would need. But just like this, another suggestion, this guy is out here somewhere. And Reed views him as an equal, or Reed views him as someone who, like, if the world is being destroyed, I do have to check with him and see if he's got an idea. I like Sue's speech where she's talking about like, hey, we're not going to give our baby to Galactus, but also we're going to protect you guys. And I've heard people online criticizing the speech. I like the idea that this is a movie in a universe where people can be convinced of something like that by a speech, and specifically by the Fantastic Four, and specifically by Sue, because Sue is the diplomat of the group, and also she is, you know, the mother of Franklin, also kind of the mother of the Fantastic Four, and because the Fantastic Four protector is just kind of, you know, Earth's mom. So when she gives the pep talk that's like, hey, everything's gonna be okay, you kind of believe her. I think that scene was great. I think the idea, okay, so I think when Reed's like, we have to figure out a solution to fight Galactus, I'm like, okay, so, you know, it's gonna be that teleporting thing that we were doing in that one scene where he was teleporting an egg or something. Sure. And Reed has this aha moment when Sue specifically, I believe, uses the phrase, move heaven and earth. And if I'm Reed, I'm like, oh, move Galactus. Right? Like, that's idea one, obviously. Not move the whole planet, because that doesn't seem like it would work. It feels like you would destroy the thing you're moving, or there would be a high risk of that. I guess all I'm saying, the only reason I'm bringing it up is just because when it was clear they were doing something like that, and then the idea was introduced, how it's so clear that they were going to try to teleport Galactus somewhere else, that when for a while they're like, let's teleport the whole Earth somewhere else. I'm like, well, that's definitely not it. But I love the whole everybody working together and like sacrificing, and a small group of really dedicated individuals can change the world. Like, that's great. And that is, again, part of like, I think some people have said like, oh, the movie looks cool, looks 60s, but it doesn't feel 60s. That is 60s. And that is the space race. And that is that ideology of like mankind coming together to do something. And obviously it was a divisive time for a lot of reasons, but there's this hopefulness, at least looking back, that we see associated with that time. And like that was captured here. A final scene where everybody's fighting Galactus. Cool. Galactus looks great. Loved Galactus looking at our Statue of Liberty and going, you know, that was good. I like that they evacuated everybody to Subterranea. I'd be a little worried personally. I'd just evacuate them to New Jersey or something. As much as Subterranea is cool, this guy's pretty big, Reed. What if he just collapses all the streets when he stands on them? Like that time it happened to the building. And then part of me is like, oh, is that part of the plan? Are they going to trap him in like the subterranean? But no, that's not part of the plan. I get it. People prefer Subterranea to New Jersey in the Fantastic Four-verse. That maked sense to me. I really liked, as far as images from the big fight, loved Reed jumping around on Galactus's back, trying to open his little lava exhaust ports or whatever. I like the idea that Reed, because for a second I'm like, oh, he's just going to kind of try to stab at Galactus's eye, which seems to be the plan in this movie and in the Superman movie for killing a big thing, which is like Johnny was burning him there. But also, I really liked that it was like, no, I'm going to open his stupid little things. And that kind of worked. And it's like, oh, Reed's got an idea. I'd like that. It was not something I had thought about. The Fantastic Car was super cool. That's a great look for that time period, and also just a really cool looking thing. And then, yeah, Sue pushing Galactus into the thing. I was really glad, because there was a point when Galactus gets pushed into the thing the first time, the black hole, where I'm like, oh, I guess Silver Surfer just left or something. And I was like, funny, because it feels like there was going to be a moment where Silver Surfer comes back, and then Galactus comes back, Silver Surfer comes back. All right, perfect. I didn't believe for a second Sue had died, and but like, only because, like, if we're killing a member of the Fantastic Four, it's any of the rest of them, except for Sue. We can't kill her. We can kill Johnny. They've done that in the comics. We can kill Ben, get She-Hulk to sub in for a little bit until we find him in a parallel reality. Killing Reed is tricky, but, like, I think you could do that before you could kill Sue. And it was a very sad scene. It was a cool scene. It was sad that they killed the robot. They killed Herbie. I loved the design of Herbie. I loved his little tape deck eyes and how he made his little beep 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 sounds, whatever, I don't know, it sounded like. But when Galactus reaches in to get Franklin, I kind of expected Herbie to also be in his hand, with like a little laser beam and like a buzzsaw trying to cut Galactus's fingers off or something, and then you would like toss him. But like, we never see what happens to Herbie. I imagine they built another one. And I don't feel as bad because it's like his brain is those little tapes, but still, I don't know. It felt weird that we didn't get resolution for the robot, and also that the robot didn't have some sort of crazy weapon that it was able to use to protect Franklin. Okay, the score is the best part of the movie. I would say production design, second best part, but score best. Here's, if I'm at to rank the parts of the movie, score, production design, casting. Those are the big three. And I think that's usually true of these Marvel movies. Like, casting is always really big. Like, and then maybe like fight choreography can be big, humor can be big, but I like that like production design and score, like classic movie things, just felt really intentional here. Michael Giacchino is easily my favorite person that does this job. I don't think they get nearly enough credit. I remember like in high school really loving the Incredibles soundtrack, which they also made. And then as I got older, really loving the Speed Racer soundtrack, which they also made. If you've never seen it, watch the Speed Racer movie. I talked about it enough. Patrick Williams made a great video about why it's the most important movie of this century. I think is what his video was. But that score is great. I liked his Doctor Strange score. I think this is his best work. And I think Marvel knows this because they keep trotting him out for stuff. He was at the premiere with like an orchestra, and listening to this soundtrack is such a hype, like it gets you hyped up, and it's just fun. I feel like Michael Giacchino soundtracks, most of them, give me the energy of like movement better than anything else. Like there's soundtracks that you can like drive to like on a highway, not like to speed, but just like to feel like you're moving. Love it. So 2 post-credit scenes. The second one was just the Fantastic Four cartoon. Fine. I know why they do it like that. That's usually the makeup too. It's usually like a serious one and a silly one. Spider-Man Homecoming did that the best. Scorpion tease that hasn't happened, but like a serious, and then like a silly little joke one where Captain America points at the camera and says, "Patience," right? Like I think audiences still aren't ready for that, because every time you get to the end of one of these and the silly one happens, people kind of go, "Aww." I wanted it to be more. And I get it. I get wanting it to be more, but we have to temper our expectations a little bit. The post-credit scene with Doom is cool. I like that we're fasting forward another 4 years, so we don't have to deal with babies. I wish we had seen his face, because we get the back of Doom's head, like with his cloak and his hood, and then him holding his mask. And mostly just because I want to know this, because I just don't know what we're doing with Doom. And it's fine. I don't need to know everything. But like, does he look like Tony Stark on our Earth? Does he look like Tony Stark on their Earth? Is he all burnt up? Is the Tony Stark face and like that look something he picks up so that he can trick people on our Earth? Like, there's just a lot of options there. And I can see it playing out any number of ways. And, it's good that they showed him. But I wish we saw a teeny tiny bit more. I think that would have been a good place, if they wanted to make it feel important, put a bigger Doom moment in their past, in their cartoon. So make the cartoon them fighting Diablo and, the Mad Thinker and whatever. And then the last one is like Dr. Doom's like, "I'll get you, Richards," or something, in a very hokey, cartoony way, but also in a way that's like, that is Dr. Doom. Like, this is, he's big. He does matter to them. They know who he is. Like, we still don't get confirmation. When Sue sees Dr. Doom with the kid, she doesn't go, "Oh, Victor," she's just like, "Oh, that." And that's not good. If anything, I feel like she'd see him and go, "Mole Man?" Because Mole Man also has green and a mask. Not the same mask, but like, it would be weird if Mole Man came to hang out with their kid. Overall, thought the movie was great. And you know what else is great? Nebula. And obviously, yes, the character Nebula is very exciting, but I'm actually talking about the subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of my YouTube friends helped to create. And basically, the pitch for my channel on Nebula, all my videos go up early and ad-free on Nebula. So like this video, you're watching it right now, it was on Nebula just maybe like a couple hours before it went live. But like my next video on my Nando V Movies channel, which is what was Phase 5 about, that's going to be up probably like a couple weeks early. So like, you get access to the videos early, ad-free. Lots of other YouTubers you already like. Some of them who talk about comics and movies and stuff like that are already on this platform. You got Patrick Willems, Captain Midnight, Princess Weeks, just added Shea Frillis Productions, who I love, obviously, and we're always adding more. Then We also have originals that we do. These like really high quality productions. Sometimes they're like videos. We've done documentaries. We did a play once. We're doing a series soon that is a scripted drama. It's an anthology in the vein of Twilight Zone and Black Mirror, but instead of being about science fiction stuff, it's about complicated human relationships that take place in New York City. And one of the episodes, called Power Trip, was written by me, and Patrick Willems directed it. And I've been updating you guys in these little bits at the end of the videos as like the production's gone on. So we filmed it, and it looks incredible. The actors like blew me away, but you will see it and you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't have anything I can share right now, but trust me, when that comes up, you'll see it. And I hope we make behind the scenes thing so you can see how we made it, because that part is also so cool. So that'll be out sometime in the near future. Can't say exactly when. Until then, you can watch, we just put out a series called Amy's Dead End Dream House by and starring Maggie Mayfish, with a bunch of people playing the weird puppet guys, because it's kind of like a Pee-wee's Playhouse thing. One of them being Paul F. Tompkins. That's really cool. And it's very fun. And again, it has the feel of one of those children's shows, but for adults about adult problems. And that is very cool. And we're putting new episodes of that out weekly on Nebula as well. And the best part is a yearly subscription to Nebula is a steal at $60 a year. It's $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get Nebula for just $36 a year. That is $3 a month. It is an incredible deal. Go check it out. So thank you everybody for watching. That's all I got. Stay safe.